Welcome to an episode of Quick Hacks. Today we will have a look at how to use the React Native toolchain to create a simple test application and to run it in Android virtual device, and also how to use Haxe to compile it for us instead of using JavaScript or TypeScript. Here you can see some information about the tools I'm using, the versions of the libraries, etc. Please note that to follow along you should have some experience with React and React Native. You should have completed the React Native CLI Quick Start so that you can get a test application up and running as described in the docs. Before we jump into it, some special thanks to Philippe Sass for creating the Haxe React libraries, and also to Kevin Young for being the driving force behind Haxe React Native development. So we start by creating a project folder. We could call it anything, but for now we call it Haxe React Native. Then we'll open up VS Code and initialize a simple Haxe project just with a build.html and the main source file. Now we will leave the Haxe project aside for a second and focus on the React Native setup. Now we open up a terminal and we will use the React Native CLI to initialize a React Native project. We will use the command react-native init, and for the project name here we will use bin. Just relax for a moment and wait for the project to be created. Inside the bin folder we now have the complete React Native project with the build files and source files and everything. Now we just cd our terminal also into it. We're now ready to test run our out-of-the-box React Native project, and for that we use react-native run-android. This will kick off our default virtual device and we will see the application running. React Native uses a library loading mechanism, so we can see the changes in our source files immediately reflected in the running app. So now when we have an up and running React Native application going, we will focus on how to use Haxe in this. Basically we will do two things. We will replace the app.js with a Haxe generated one, that's the main application. And we will also do a very tiny change in the index.js. That's a file that bootstraps the React Native application. When it comes to the Haxe part of this, we will start by installing the needed libraries. At first I set up a new local repo with the command haxlib new repo. It creates a new folder .haxlib. And after that I just install the libraries React and React Native with haxlib install React and haxlib install React Native. Now we will have a look at the Haxe build file, build.html, and replace it with the following. At the top we have some stuff for optimizing the generated code. We have the code path, and we also have two libraries. That's the ones we installed earlier. It's React and React Native. We also have a reference to the app file. That's the one we are going to compile. Please note that we don't use -main app in this case. That's because we're not bootstrapping the application from this file. That's done from the index.js that we saw earlier. We also have -d JS ES6. That's a compiler directive that gives us JavaScript ES6 style output. Not really needed, but it makes it a bit easier to compare the Haxe generated output with the original app.js. And finally, we define the target file that our compilation compiles to. That's bin/app.js. Now when it comes to the actual Haxe source, we're going to rename the main.hx to app.hx. We're then going to paste some code, some imports for the React libraries used, and also the code for a minuscule app with just a render function with some hello world stuff in it. Please note the expose directive. It's used to export the app class so it can be imported into index.js. One last thing before we actually compile and overwrite the app.js, we will make a copy of the original one so we can go back to that one later if we want to. So, time to compile. This gives us a new app.js, but it also at the same time gives us runtime errors. The reason to this is that the Haxe export mechanism right now doesn't give us the possibility to export default, just on the level of export. To solve this, we have to do a tiny change in the index.js. We have to change the import app to import curly brace app, and thus we have the named import that corresponds to what we exported, and our application runs. So now the fun part starts. We can start playing with the app and well, basically do anything that is possible in a React Native app. Here I'm using some styling and I'm having an image loading from haxe.org, of course. And well, just compile and hot reload the new content. That's it. Thank you very much and see you another time.